for the world. Genevieve Lacroix Sterling had it all: the coveted Fifth Avenue penthouse overlooking Central Park, a portfolio that rivaled a small nation's GDP, and a husband, Arthur Sterling, whose name was a titan in global finance. Their life was a carefully curated masterpiece of porcelain perfection. But behind the hand-painted Gracie wallpaper and the soft glow of Tiffany lamps, a rot was spreading. One Tuesday night, in the one room that was supposed to be a sanctuary of pure love, their unborn son's nursery, Genevieve would stumble upon a betrayal so profound it fractured the very air she breathed. This isn't just a story of infidelity. It's the story of what happens when a woman of immense grace is pushed to the edge and discovers the steel underneath. The air in the penthouse at 834 Fifth Avenue was always different. A climate-controlled, triple-filtered atmosphere that smelled vaguely of money-white florals and the faintest hint of lemon polish from the daily ministrations of a silent, efficient staff. For Genevieve Lacroix Sterling, it was the scent of home, a scent she had carefully curated over 7 years of marriage to Arthur Sterling. Tonight, however, a discordant note had crept in. It was just past 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. Arthur was supposed to be at a late-night merger dinner with Japanese investors, a common occurrence in their world. Genevieve, 8 months pregnant and feeling the full weight of it in her lower back, had spent the evening in her personal study, finalizing a philanthropic bid for the new wing of the MoMA. Her family, the Lacroix dynasty of old-world textiles, had taught her that a woman's power wasn't just in the man she married, but in the legacy she built herself. A sudden thirst pulled her from her work. She padded barefoot across the cool Italian marble of the grand hallway, her hand resting instinctively on the perfect, taut globe of her stomach. The baby, whom they had already named Leo, kicked gently a familiar, reassuring flutter. She smiled. Everything was for him. The life they were building, the quiet power of their names, combined the future stretching out before them, like the park sprawling beneath their windows. All of it was for Leo. She passed the cavernous living room, its walls adorned with a Rothko and a small, exquisite Degas sculpture. The lights were low, casting long shadows. Strange. Maria, the head housekeeper, was meticulous about turning everything off before she and the staff retired to their wing. Genevieve paused, a flicker of unease prickling her skin. She heard a sound, not from the living room, but further down the hall. A faint, muffled giggle. It came from the direction of the nursery. Her heart gave a strange, painful lurch. Why would anyone be in the nursery? It was her sanctuary within a sanctuary. She had overseen every detail, from the hand-stitched constellations on the silk ceiling to the commissioned Beatrix Potter murals that danced across the walls. The scent in there was supposed to be one thing only: the gentle, calming aroma of lavender and chamomile she spritzed on the linens each night, a ritual of welcome for her son. Quietly, her bare feet making no sound, she moved toward the heavy, soundproofed oak door. The giggling came again, clearer this time. Feminine and breathless. It was followed by a low murmur. A man's voice, Arthur's voice. Confusion warred with a sudden, sickening dread. The Japanese dinner. He had texted her an hour ago, a picture of a sake bottle with the caption, "Closing the deal for us, my love. For you and Leo." Her hand trembled as she reached for the large, cold brass doorknob. She didn't turn it. Instead, she pushed. The door was ajar, left open just a crack. It swung inward without a sound. The scene that met her eyes would be burned into her memory for the rest of her life, a searing brand on her soul. The only light came from a small moon-shaped nightlight near the crib, casting a soft, ethereal glow on the two figures. Arthur, his billion-dollar Brioni suit jacket discarded on the rocking chair, had a woman pinned against the wall, right under a mural of Peter Rabbit. Her dress, a slick sheath of red silk that Genevieve had never seen before, was hiked up around her waist. His hands were tangled in her long, dark hair, and her head was thrown back, a silent laugh on her lips. Genevieve recognized her instantly. It was Serafina Vance, the daughter of Marcus Vance, the CEO of Vance Capital, a rival firm Arthur had been in a protracted and hostile acquisition battle with for the better part of a year. Serafina, with her sharp features and even sharper reputation, was a fixture on the gossip pages, always draped on the arm of some European playboy or tech billionaire. But it wasn't the identity of the woman that shattered Genevieve. It was the location. They were in the nursery, her baby's room. They were leaning against the wall where Leo would one day rest his head. Their lust-filled panting was mingling with the gentle scent of lavender she'd sprayed for her son. The crib, a magnificent piece of hand-carved cherrywood that had been in her family for 3 generations, stood just feet away, a silent witness to this ultimate desecration. For a moment that stretched into an eternity, Genevieve couldn't breathe. The air was stolen from her lungs. The world narrowed to a pinprick of nauseating light. She saw the details with a horrible, crystalline clarity. The way Serafina's red lacquered nails dug into Arthur's shoulders, the smug, proprietary look in her eyes as she met Arthur's gaze, the way his Patek Philippe. Watch a gift from Genevieve for their 5th anniversary glinted in the dim light as his hand moved down Serafina's back. They hadn't seen her. They were lost in their own sordid world, defiling the most sacred space in her life. A primal scream built in her throat, hot and acidic, but she swallowed it down. She would not give them the satisfaction of a scene. She would not break down in front of them. The Lacroix women did not cry. They calculated. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind from a lifetime ago. Tears are for the weak, mon chéri. The strong build empires from their pain. With a control she didn't know she possessed, Genevieve backed away. She pulled the door until it was almost shut, leaving only the tiniest crack. She moved backward, step by silent step, her hand still pressed against her stomach, no longer in maternal bliss but as a shield, protecting Leo, protecting herself. She retreated to the far end of the penthouse, to the guest suite that faced the glittering lights of the city, a room rarely used. She locked the door, her movements stiff and robotic. She didn't turn on the lights. She sank onto the edge of the unfamiliar bed, the brocade cold against her skin. She didn't cry. She sat in the darkness, the image of the red dress and the Peter Rabbit mural playing on a loop in her mind. The silence of the vast apartment was broken only by the frantic, silent beating of her own heart. The betrayal was absolute. It wasn't just an affair. It was a declaration of war, waged in the heart of her future. And Arthur, in his arrogance, had just armed his enemy with a weapon of unimaginable power, a mother's righteous fury. She took a deep, shuddering breath and pulled out her phone. She didn't scroll to her mother or her best friend. She scrolled to a name filed under J.C. The call connected on the second ring. "Alja," she said, her voice a dead, flat calm that frightened even her. "It's Genevieve Sterling. I need you. I need you to bring the papers. Everything we discussed in the contingency plan. Bring them tomorrow morning. 10 a.m. sharp. The other side of the line was silent for a beat, the kind of silence that conveyed complete understanding. Alger Brush was not a man given to platitudes or unnecessary questions. At 62, with a mane of silver hair and a reputation for being the most ruthless divorce attorney in New York, he had seen and heard everything. He had drafted Genevieve's prenuptial agreement 7 years ago, and at her quiet insistence had created a confidential and far more aggressive post-nuptial contingency document 2 years later, after she first felt the subtle shift in Arthur's priorities. Arthur had laughed when she'd presented a watered-down version of it for his signature, calling it her little project. He had no idea about the real document locked in Alger's vault. 10 a.m. Alger's voice was a low baritone devoid of surprise. Is the asset secure? In their coded language, the asset was not a stock or a bond. It was Genevieve's well-being and, by extension, the well-being of her unborn child. The asset is contained. Genevieve replied, her gaze distant, fixed on the distant glow of the Chrysler Building. But the environment has been compromised, irreversibly. I understand. No further contact. Do not engage. Acknowledge nothing. I'll handle everything from this point on. A car will be waiting for you at the service entrance at 7 a.m. It will take you to the Stanhope. I've already secured the presidential suite under a holding company name. You will not be disturbed. Thank you, Alger. Genevieve. He said, a rare note of something other than business in his voice. You are the granddaughter of Antoinette Lacroix. Remember who you are. He disconnected. Genevieve lowered the phone, the words hanging in the air. Remember who you are. Her grandmother had been a force of nature, a woman who had rebuilt the family's textile empire from the ashes of post-war Europe with little more than a loom and an indomitable will. She did not suffer fools, and she certainly did not suffer betrayal. Genevieve spent the next few hours in a state of suspended animation. She didn't sleep. She sat. The city lights blurred into a watercolor wash outside the window. She felt Leo stir again, a more insistent movement this time, as if sensing his mother's distress. She stroked her belly, whispering to him in the dark. It's all right, my love. Mama's here. Mama will fix this. I will build a fortress around you, and no one will ever hurt you. Around 3 a.m., she heard the faint sounds of Arthur moving about the apartment, the clink of a glass, the heavy tread of his footsteps, then the soft click of their bedroom door opening and closing. He had finally finished with his conquest and retired to their marital bed, likely reeking of Serafina Vance's cheap perfume and self-satisfaction. The thought sent a wave of icy resolve through her, extinguishing the last embers of her grief. At 6 a.m., before the sun had fully risen over the East River, Genevieve moved. Her actions were precise and economical. She packed a single Rimowa suitcase with essentials, a few changes of comfortable maternity clothes from Loro Piana, her toiletries, her laptop, and a small, worn, leather-bound book of her grandmother's maxims. She left behind the diamonds, the couture gowns, the entire life that was a lie. In the master bathroom, she took her wedding and engagement rings, a flawless 10-carat diamond that had been featured in Vogue, and placed them deliberately in the center of Arthur's sink. A small, final gesture. She slipped out of the apartment through the service corridors. She knew better than he did a remnant of her hands-on approach to managing their home. The staff elevator descended silently, and as promised, a black, unassuming Cadillac Escalade was waiting in the delivery bay. The driver, a man whose face was a stony mask, simply opened the door for her, took her suitcase and closed her into the plush leather interior. As the car pulled out onto a sleepy 64th Street, her phone buzzed. A text from Arthur. "Morning, my love. Woke up and you weren't here. Everything okay?" The dinner went on forever. Exhausted. "See you for breakfast." Another buzz. "Where are you?" Maria said. "She hasn't seen you." Genevieve stared at the messages, a bitter smile touching her lips. The casual ease of his lies was breathtaking. She didn't reply. She powered the phone off and dropped it into her Hermès bag. She would not be gaslit. She would not be manipulated. The conversation was over. From now on, Alger Brush would do the talking. The suite at the Stanhope was magnificent, a classic old-world space with sweeping views of the park from the north. It felt anonymous and safe. A light breakfast of fruit yogurt and decaffeinated tea was already laid out. She ate mechanically, forcing herself to nourish her body, to nourish Leo. She was no longer just Genevieve. She was a vessel for the next generation of her family, and she had a duty to protect him. At 9:55 a.m., her temporary phone provided by Alger's team chimed. It was Alger. "We are walking into the lobby of your building now. Are you ready?" Genevieve looked at her reflection in the grand mirror of the suite. The woman staring back was pale, and her eyes were shadowed, but they held a fire that hadn't been there 24 hours ago. The soft, accommodating wife was gone. In her place stood the heiress to the Lacroix fortune, a woman about to reclaim her name and her life. "I was born ready, Alger," she said. Arthur Sterling woke with a familiar dull headache that only a $5,000 bottle of Suntory whiskey could produce. He rolled over in the vast bed, reaching for Genevieve, his mind still foggy. The space beside him was empty and cold. He frowned, sitting up. That was odd. Jen was always an early riser, but she usually read in the sitting area of their bedroom until he woke. He saw her rings in the bathroom sink. A sliver of unease, sharp and unwelcome, cut through his hangover. It wasn't an angry gesture like throwing them. It was a placement. Deliberate. Final. He splashed water on his face, trying to clear his head. The details of the night before were a bit of a blur. Serafina had been enthusiastic. It was a thrill doing it with her right under his own roof. The danger, the sheer audacity of it, especially with her father being his corporate nemesis, had been a potent aphrodisiac. And the nursery. That had been Serafina's idea, a wickedly decadent suggestion. He'd been too drunk and aroused to refuse. It was just a room, after all. He convinced himself Jen had probably gone to her mother's in Connecticut for the day. She did that sometimes when she needed space, though usually after a discussion. He'd smooth it over. He was Arthur Sterling. He could smooth anything over. He'd buy her a new piece of art, a ridiculously expensive bracelet from JR, and she'd melt just like she always did. He threw on a cashmere robe and padded out to the breakfast nook, expecting to find the Wall Street Journal laid out next to his freshly squeezed orange juice. Instead, he found Maria, their housekeeper, looking flustered. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Sterling left very early this morning." "Yes, I know, Maria. Did she say where she was going?" "No, sir." A car picked her up from the service entrance. The service entrance? The unease sharpened into genuine alarm. Genevieve never used the service entrance. Just then the chime of the private elevator that opened directly into their foyer sounded. Arthur relaxed. It was probably her back, already ready for his apology and the inevitable reconciliation. He composed his face into a mask of charming contrition as he walked toward the sound. The elevator doors slid open. It wasn't Genevieve. It was a man he vaguely recognized from society events, a silver-haired shark in a suit so impeccably tailored it seemed molded to his frame. Behind him stood a younger, equally severe-looking associate, clutching a thick leather briefcase. "Alger Brush." The man said, his voice as cool and hard as the marble floor. He didn't offer a hand. "We have an appointment." Arthur's mind raced. Alger Brush. Genevieve's family lawyer. The man who handled her trust and philanthropic endeavors. What the hell was he doing here, Brush? This is unexpected, Arthur stammered, trying to regain his footing. "Genevieve isn't here. We know," Alger said, stepping out of the elevator as if he owned the place. His associate followed a silent shadow. "Our business is with you, Mr. Sterling." He gestured toward the formal living room. "Shall we?" It wasn't a question. Stunned into silence, Arthur led them into the room dominated by the Rothko. He felt absurdly exposed in his cashmere robe. Alger Brush and his associate sat on the pristine white sofa, placing the briefcase on the glass coffee table between them with a heavy definitive thud. "I don't understand." Arthur began running a hand through his disheveled hair. "What is this about?" Alger snapped open the briefcase. He extracted a sheaf of documents, thick and bound in blue. He slid it across the table toward Arthur. "This," Alger said, his eyes locking onto Arthur's, "is a petition for the dissolution of marriage between Genevieve Lacroix Sterling and Arthur Sterling, filed with the Supreme Court of the State of New York an hour ago on the grounds of adultery." The words hit Arthur like a physical blow. Dissolution. Adultery. He stared at the papers, his mind refusing to process what he was seeing. "This is insane." He sputtered, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. "A misunderstanding. Jen is just upset. We had a small disagreement." "There is no misunderstanding, Mr. Sterling." Alger continued, his tone unwavering. "The petition also includes an immediate ex parte application for exclusive use and occupancy of this residence, the Hamptons estate in Sagaponack, and the chalet in Gstaad. It freezes a list of joint assets detailed on page 12, effective immediately. And it contains a temporary restraining order, preventing you from contacting, harassing, or coming within 500 feet of my client." Arthur's face paled. "You can't be serious." 500 feet. She's my wife. She's pregnant with my child. A child whose developmental sanctuary you saw fit to defile last night with Miss Seraphina Vance at approximately 10:15 p.m. Alger stated without a flicker of emotion. The blood drained from Arthur's face. He felt as if the floor had dropped out. From under him, she had seen, Genevieve had seen them. The deliberate placement of the rings in the sink suddenly made a horrifying kind of sense. It wasn't an act of petulance. It was a verdict. "Where is she?" he demanded, his voice rising in panic. "I need to talk to her." "You will do no such thing," Alger said, rising to his feet. "From this moment forward, all communication will go through my office, and I assure you my client has nothing to say to you. You have 24 hours to have your attorney contact me. A list of our non-negotiable preliminary demands is on page 3. I suggest you read it very carefully." Alger nodded to his associate, who placed another, slimmer document on the table. "That is a copy of the restraining order. A process server is waiting downstairs to serve you officially. We are leaving now. I'd advise you to vacate the premises by the end of the day to avoid a rather unpleasant scene with the NYPD." Arthur was speechless, his mind a maelstrom of shock fury and a dawning, terrifying sense of loss. He had underestimated her. He had seen her grace and mistaken it for fragility. He had seen her quietness and mistaken it for weakness. He had thought he was the titan, the master of their universe, but in one swift, silent move, she had checkmated him. As Alger Brush turned to leave, Arthur's desperation curdled into righteous anger. This was an overreaction, a dramatic, hysterical overreaction. "This is because of Vance, isn't it?" He snarled, a new theory forming in his panicked mind. "She's colluding with Marcus Vance. This is a corporate tactic, using his daughter to set me up, and having Jenin pull this stunt to get leverage in the acquisition." Alger paused at the elevator, turning back slowly. A ghost of a smile, cold and predatory, touched his lips. It was the first hint of emotion he had shown, and it was terrifying. "Mr. Sterling," he said, the words dripping with condescension, "you still don't get it. You are a man who looks at a masterpiece and sees only the price tag. You think this is about business. You think this is about leverage. You are, if you'll forgive the candor, a fool." He stepped into the elevator. "This isn't about your deal with Vance Capital. This is about what you did in a room full of Beatrix Potter murals. You have gravely misunderstood the woman you married, and you are about to pay a price far greater than any corporate acquisition." The elevator doors slid shut, leaving Arthur Sterling alone in his magnificent living room, a man suddenly stripped of everything, clutching a set of papers that represented the complete and utter demolition of his life. In her suite at the Stanhope, Genevieve was not idle. While Alger was dismantling Arthur's world, she was calmly assembling her war room. A team from Alger's office had delivered encrypted laptops and secure hard drives. Spread across the antique dining table were not magazines and novels, but financial statements, trust documents and corporate holding charts she had been quietly compiling for the last 2 years. She was not the pampered wife Arthur believed her to be. Her father, a shrewd and loving man, had insisted she get her MBA from Wharton the same as him. "You must be able to read a balance sheet as easily as you read Proust Mafila," he'd always said. While Arthur was out courting investors and preening for the financial press, Genevieve had been the one poring over the fine print of his deals, often catching errors or liabilities his own team had missed. She was the silent architect of some of his greatest successes, a fact he conveniently forgot to mention in boardrooms or interviews. The first order of business was Serafina Vance. Genevieve had always dismissed her as a vacuous socialite, a tool her father Marcus Vance used for public relations, but her presence in the nursery was too specific, too targeted. It felt less like a crime of passion and more like a strategic move. "Alger, I want everything on her," Genevieve said over a secure line. "Not the gossip column trash. I want to know who she talks to, where her money comes from her travel logs for the past 6 months. Hire PIs. The best. I don't care what it costs." Already underway, Alger confirmed. "I have a team from Kroll on it. We should have a preliminary report by evening." The report that landed in her encrypted inbox at 7 p.m. was more damning than she could have imagined. Serafina Vance was far from a simple party girl. She had a degree in finance from LSE and held a discreet but powerful position within her father's company, Director of Opposition Research. Her job was to dig up dirt on competitors, identify weaknesses, and exploit them. Her recent romances with tech CEOs and hedge fund managers all curiously preceded major market moves or failed acquisitions involving Vance Capital. She wasn't a mistress. She was a corporate saboteur. The PI's report included discreetly obtained photographs. Serafina meeting with one of Arthur's disgruntled former board members. Serafina having lunch with a journalist, known for his scathing takedowns of high-profile CEOs, and the final sickening piece of the puzzle phone records showing dozens of calls and texts between her and Arthur over the past 4 months, a timeline that directly corresponded with a series of mysterious leaks from within Sterling Industries that had damaged their stock price and complicated the Vance capital acquisition. Arthur hadn't just cheated on her. He had been sleeping with the enemy, actively and willingly conspiring with a woman whose entire purpose was to destroy him and, by extension, their family. The sheer breathtaking stupidity of it almost made her laugh. His ego, his belief that he could control and manipulate everyone, had made him the perfect mark. The next morning, Alger's team forwarded a new piece of intelligence, this one a bombshell. A source inside Vance Capital, cultivated by Alger's investigators, revealed the end game. Serafina's mission was to get close enough to Arthur to obtain sensitive information about a proprietary trading algorithm Sterling Industries had developed, code-named Prometheus. This algorithm was the company's crown jewel, the engine behind its massive profits. The plan was for Vance Capital to use this information to sabotage the acquisition from the inside, trigger a stock collapse, and then scoop up Sterling Industries for pennies on the dollar. The betrayal now had a price tag, the entire Sterling empire, valued at roughly $9 billion. Genevieve sat back, the information swirling in her mind. This changed the entire battlefield. This was no longer a domestic dispute. It was corporate warfare, and Serafina and Arthur had just handed her the ammunition. But how to use it, exposing the plot publicly, would crater Sterling Industries' stock, harming her own assets and Leo's inheritance in the process. She needed to be smarter, more precise. She thought back to her grandmother, Antoinette. Antoinette had once faced a hostile takeover from a British conglomerate. They had tried to blackmail her, threatening to expose a youthful indiscretion of her late husband. Instead of cowering, Antoinette had called a press conference, admitted to the long-past issue on her own terms with grace and dignity, and then systematically revealed every dirty trick, every instance of financial malfeasance and insider trading the British firm had ever committed, which her own team had been quietly researching for months. She hadn't just won, she had annihilated them. The conglomerate was buried in lawsuits and government investigations for a decade. Never fight on their terms. Genevieve, her grandmother's voice echoed. Create your own battlefield. Genevieve picked up the phone to Alger. Alger. The plan has changed, she said, her voice clear and decisive. We are no longer just filing for divorce. We are going on the offensive. I want you to arrange a meeting, not with Arthur's lawyers. I want a meeting with Marcus Vance, and I want to be there. There was a pause. Genevieve. That's highly unorthodox. It could compromise our position. No, Alger. She corrected him gently but firmly. It is our position. Marcus Vance thinks he's playing chess with my husband. He's about to find out he's been playing checkers with me. And I'm about to flip the board over. She had one more call to make. A number she hadn't dialed in years. It was to a man named Jean-Luc, her grandmother's former head of security in Paris. A man who owed his life to the Lacroix family. He was now retired, but his skills and his network were legendary. Jean-Luc, c'est Genevieve, she said when he answered. I have a small project for you in New York. I need to know everything about a man named Marcus Vance, not the corporate profile. I want to know where he buries his secrets. I have a feeling he and I have a great deal to talk about. The woman who had wept silently in a guest room just 2 days ago was gone. In her place was a strategist, a commander marshalling her forces. Arthur had started a fire thinking he could control it. He had no idea he was about to be consumed by it. Arthur Sterling was a man adrift in a sea of his own making. He had been served officially and humiliatingly in the lobby of his own building. He had retreated not to a hotel, but to his bachelor pad, a sterile, glass-walled apartment in Tribeca he kept for poker nights, a fact he now realized was probably well known to Genevieve's investigators. His first call had been to his own lawyer, a bulldog named Frank Miller, known more for bluster than brilliance. Frank had been apoplectic. "Are you insane, Arthur?" he'd yelled over the phone. "In the nursery. With the daughter of the guy you're trying to take over. Do you have any idea how this looks? They'll crucify you. We have to prove this is a setup." But Arthur knew it wasn't. It was pure, unadulterated arrogance on his part. He had spent 2 days trying to contact Genevieve, a barrage of texts and voicemails that went unanswered. He'd sent flowers, a veritable forest of orchids, to her mother's home in Connecticut, only to receive a call from his mother-in-law, a woman who had always adored him, whose voice was now colder than a winter tombstone. "Don't you ever contact this family again," she had said, before hanging up. The first legal volley from Alger Brush's office was a masterpiece of financial warfare. It wasn't just the petition. It was a series of injunctions and liens placed on assets Arthur didn't even think Genevieve knew about. A holding company in the Cayman Islands, a portfolio of rare watches held in a Swiss vault, his shares in a tech startup he'd invested in with his poker buddies. The prenuptial agreement they had signed was solid, designed to protect their individual assets going into the marriage. Genevieve's Lacroix inheritance was untouchable, as was Arthur's seed money for Sterling Industries. However, the prenup stipulated that any wealth created during the marriage would be split 60-40 in his favor, a point of pride for him at the time. But Alger Brush was ignoring the prenup. His filing argued for it to be thrown out entirely, citing extreme emotional duress and a pattern of deceit that constitutes gross marital misconduct. Instead, he was pushing for a net to 50. 50 split of all assets, including the foundational value of Sterling Industries, under a new interpretation of marital asset law. It was an audacious, almost ludicrous claim, but it was designed to do one thing: bog Arthur down in a legal quagmire that would cost him millions in fees and bleed him dry. "They're coming after the company." Arthur Frank Miller panicked. "They're trying to argue that her support and counsel were integral to the company's growth, making it a fully shared marital asset. It's bullshit, but it's expensive bullshit." Arthur tried to fight back. He had his accountants attempt to move funds to shift assets into new untraceable accounts. But at every turn, he was blocked. It was as if Genevieve had a map of his entire financial soul. He'd forgotten about the late nights she'd spent helping him organize his paperwork for the IRS, the way she'd created spreadsheets to track their myriad investments. He had seen it as wifely duty. She had been gathering intelligence. The battlefield was drawn. His strategy was to paint Genevieve as an unstable, hormonal, pregnant woman having an irrational overreaction. Their first motion was to demand a psychological evaluation, a nasty, brutish tactic designed to intimidate. Alger Brush's response was swift and devastating. He filed a counter-motion that included a sworn affidavit from Maria, the head housekeeper, detailing Arthur's increasingly frequent late nights and the scent of unfamiliar perfume on his clothes for months. It included a statement from their doorman, who noted the regular late-night visits of a woman in a red sports car to the building's garage, and it included the PI's preliminary report on Serafina Vance, framing Arthur not as a simple adulterer, but as a man with reckless judgment unfit to be a CEO or a father who had willfully endangered his family and his company by consorting with a known corporate saboteur. The request for a psych evaluation was laughed out of the judge's chambers. Score 1 for Genevieve. Meanwhile, Genevieve was orchestrating her own financial maneuvers. The contingency document she had signed with Alger 2 years prior, the one Arthur didn't know about, gave Alger Brush power of attorney over her personal finances in the event of a marital breakdown. Using this, they began quietly liquidating certain joint assets that were still fluid, converting them to cash, and placing them in a new trust, solely in her and Leo's names. More importantly, she was using her own vast, untouchable Lacroix funds to her advantage. She hired a team of forensic accountants, the best in the world, to tear apart Sterling Industries' books. Not to find fault with the company, but to identify every single contribution, direct or indirect, she had made. The team uncovered an email from 6 years ago, when the company was struggling. Genevieve had used her Lacroix connections to secure a meeting with a notoriously reclusive French luxury goods magnate. That meeting led to a massive company-saving investment. Arthur had taken full credit. They found the initial wireframe designs for their first successful trading interface, sketched on a napkin by Genevieve, who had a surprising talent for user experience logic. Arthur had passed them off to his tech team as his own. They found proof that the seed money for a crucial subsidiary had come from the sale of a Monet that had been a wedding gift to Genevieve from her parents. Piece by piece, she was building a case that she was not just the woman behind the man. In many ways, she was the man. The 60-40 clause in the prenup was starting to look less like a generous offer from him and more like a theft perpetrated by him. The pressure was mounting on Arthur. His board was getting nervous. News of the restraining order and the allegations of consorting with a rival had been strategically leaked to a prominent financial columnist. His world was shrinking, his power draining away. He was trapped fighting a war on 2 fronts, one for his company and one for his personal fortune, and the general on the other side knew all his secrets. He felt a primal rage building, the unfairness of it all. So he'd made a mistake. A stupid one. Yes, but was it worth all this? The destruction of everything he'd built. In his mind, he was the victim. Now, a man besieged by a vengeful wife and her cutthroat lawyer. He had to do something drastic. He had to find a weakness, an ace of his own. And his mind, clouded with fear and fury, landed on the one thing they both held sacred, their unborn son. Arthur's new strategy was as desperate as it was cruel. Through his lawyer, he filed a motion for parental rights. It was a standard move in a divorce with children, but the language was venomous. He accused Genevieve of being emotionally unstable and of planning to flee the country to France with the baby after its birth, effectively kidnapping his son and heir. He demanded court-mandated co-parenting classes and a legal framework that would give him joint custody from the moment of birth. He was attempting to tether her to him, to use their child as a permanent leash. When Alger informed her of the filing, Genevieve felt a cold fury unlike anything before. It was one thing to fight over money. It was another thing entirely to use their innocent, unborn child as a pawn in his sordid game. "He has no idea what he's just done," she said quietly into the phone, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. Leo was due in less than 4 weeks. The meeting with Marcus Vance was set. It was to take place in a neutral location, a private conference room at the offices of Skadden Arps, a firm so powerful it was like a sovereign nation unto itself. Alger had advised against her attending, but Genevieve was adamant. She needed to look Marcus Vance in the eye. She walked into the room not as a victim, but as a CEO. She wore a custom-made navy blue dress from The Row that was elegant and professional, accommodating her pregnancy without making it the focal point. Her hair was pulled back in a severe chignon. Her face was a mask of calm composure. Marcus Vance was there with 2 of his own lawyers. He was a man in his late 60s, with a weathered face and the predatory stillness of a patient hunter. He regarded Genevieve with a look that was a mixture of pity and curiosity. Arthur was nowhere to be seen, excluded from the meeting by mutual agreement. Mrs. Sterling Marcus began his voice a gravelly rumble. I want to say on a personal level that I am sorry for my daughter's involvement in your personal affairs. Genevieve held up a hand, stopping him. Mr. Vance, let's dispense with the pleasantries. I am not here for an apology. I am here to discuss the future of our respective companies. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. His lawyers shifted uncomfortably. Your daughter Genevieve continued, her voice level and cold, was tasked with seducing my husband to acquire the source code for our Prometheus algorithm. The plan was to devalue Sterling Industries and allow you to acquire it at a discount. A solid, if rather cliché, strategy. She let that hang in the air. Marcus Vance's face remained impassive, but she saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Confirmation. Here is what is going to happen now, Genevieve said, leaning forward slightly. Your acquisition attempt is over, effective immediately. You will withdraw your offer and issue a public statement, citing unfavorable market conditions. One of Vance's lawyers started to speak, but Marcus silenced him with a glance. And why would I do that? He asked. This was the moment. This was her grandmother's press conference. Genevieve looked at Alger, who slid a single slim folder across the mahogany table. That Genevieve said is a preliminary report from my investigators. It contains bank statements tracing 3 separate payments from a shell corporation you control in Panama directly to one of my husband's board members, a Mr. Henderson. It also contains a recording of your daughter Serafina bragging to a friend about how she had my husband wrapped around her little finger and would soon have the keys to his kingdom. The SEC tends to take a rather dim view of market manipulation, corporate espionage, and insider trading. Marcus's face tightened. He had underestimated her completely. He thought he was dealing with the fool Arthur. He didn't realize the Queen was in play. And that's just the appetizer, Mr. Vance, Genevieve said, pressing her advantage. My associate in Paris, a man who is exceptionally good at his job, has been looking into your own company's history, specifically your acquisition of a German pharmaceutical firm in 2012. He found some irregularities. Bribes paid to government officials through a Swiss art dealer. A very messy business. It would be a shame if that information found its way to the Bundesanstalt für Finanzdienstleistungsaufsicht. Marcus Vance was silent for a long time. He stared at Genevieve, a new respect dawning in his cold eyes. He had been outmaneuvered. What do you want? He finally asked. I've told you. You will back off from Sterling Industries. But there's a second part to my terms. I am in the process of divorcing my husband. The legal battle will be complex. I am going to need to secure a majority stake in the company to protect my son's future. To do that, I need capital and leverage. She paused, letting the implication sink in. Your daughter put my family at risk. Genevieve said, her voice dropping to an icy whisper. "And for that, there is a price. You are going to provide me with the leverage. You will sell me through a private trust my lawyer has established the 15% stake in Sterling Industries that you have already quietly acquired on the open market over the last year. You will sell it to me at a 20% discount from yesterday's closing price." Vance's lawyer gasped. "That's outrageous. That stake is worth over $1 billion. It's worth far more than the cost of having your entire company investigated for bribery, and your daughter indicted for corporate espionage," Alger Brush interjected smoothly. "Consider it a family discount." Genevieve stood up. The meeting was over. She held all the cards. Marcus Vance knew it. She had turned his own weapon against him. His attempt to destroy her family was now going to be the very thing that saved it for her and for her son. "You have 24 hours to have your people contact Mr. Brush with the signed agreements," she said, turning to leave. "And Mr. Vance, tell your daughter to stay out of my city and my nursery." She walked out of the room without a backward glance, leaving a stunned Marcus Vance to stare at the folder on the table, the symbol of his complete and utter defeat. This was her ace. It wasn't just a secret asset. It was a strategic masterstroke. Arthur thought he was fighting her for money. She was fighting for control. And she was about to become the majority shareholder of the company he thought was his. The fallout was swift and silent. The following day, Vance Capital issued a terse press release officially withdrawing its bid for Sterling Industries. The market was confused, but the move was decisive. That same afternoon, over $1 billion worth of Sterling stock was transferred to an anonymous trust, the transaction hidden deep within the day's block trades. Just like that, Genevieve Lacroix Sterling, through her son's trust, became the silent majority power behind the company. Arthur knew none of this. He was still trying to fight a war that was already lost. His lawyer, Frank Miller, was growing increasingly frantic, as every legal avenue they tried was shut down with surgical precision by Alger Brush's team. Arthur's motion for custody had been countered with a devastating psychological profile of him painting him as a narcissist, with reckless judgment, using sworn testimony from former colleagues and the damning evidence of the Serafina Vance affair. The final confrontation did not happen in a courtroom. Genevieve had no desire for a public spectacle. She agreed to one final meeting to settle the terms of the divorce. It was held in Alger Brush's office, a space that felt like a judicial chamber with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the steel canyons of Midtown. Arthur arrived looking diminished. The swagger was gone, replaced by a haggard weariness. He had lost weight, and his expensive suit seemed to hang off his frame. He sat opposite Genevieve at the long conference table. It was the first time they had been in the same room since that fateful night. He couldn't meet her eyes. "Jen, please," he began, his voice raspy. "Let's stop this. We can work this out. For Leo." Genevieve looked at him, and for the first time she felt not anger, but a profound emptiness. He was still trying to manipulate her, still using their son's name as a tool. "The time for us to work this out, Arthur, ended when you brought another woman into our child's nursery," she said, her voice calm and devoid of emotion. "We are here to sign the papers." Alger slid the final settlement agreement across the table. "The terms are non-negotiable, Arthur," he said. Arthur's lawyer, Frank, began to bluster. "Now hold on. A 50-50 split of all marital assets, including the company. My client will never agree to." Oh, we're well past that. Alger interrupted, a slight smile on his face. He slid a second document across the table. It was a shareholder disclosure form. Arthur picked it up. He read it. His face went from pale to ashen. He read it again, his eyes widening in disbelief as he looked at the name of the trust and its controlling interest. He looked up at Genevieve, his mouth agape. How was all he could manage to whisper? "You thought this was a divorce," Arthur Genevieve said, finally meeting his gaze. Her eyes were like chips of ice. "This was a leveraged buyout. You put this company, my son's legacy, at risk with your recklessness. I simply secured it." The reality crashed down on him. She owned him. She controlled the company he had built. He was the CEO, but she was now the board. He served at her pleasure. The power dynamic had not just shifted, it had been completely inverted. "The settlement is this," Alger stated plainly. "Genevieve will waive her claim to a 50-50 split. She is, after all, a benevolent majority shareholder." The sarcasm was subtle, but sharp. "Instead, you will cede this apartment, the Hamptons estate, and the full art collection to her. You will fund a trust for Leo with $200 million in cash. Your own assets will remain yours. You will remain CEO of Sterling Industries for now, on a probationary basis. Your actions will be closely monitored by the board, which I now have the honor of advising." It was a total surrender. He was being left with his money but stripped of his power, his homes, his family, and his pride. He was a king, reduced to a figurehead in his own kingdom. Defeated Arthur signed the papers. His hand trembled as he pushed the document back across the table. He stood up, a broken man, and walked out of the room without another word. 3 weeks later, Leo Charles Lacroix was born. He had Genevieve's eyes and a peaceful disposition. Genevieve, now formally using her maiden name, again moved back into the Fifth Avenue penthouse. The nursery had been completely redone. The murals were gone, replaced with a serene, hand-painted landscape of the French countryside near her family's ancestral home. The air smelled of clean linen and baby powder. The desecration had been erased, replaced by a new beginning. She did not seek a new relationship. Her focus was singular, her son and her empire. She took an active role as chairwoman of the board, her sharp mind and quiet strength proving far more effective than Arthur's blustering charm had ever been. She was respected, feared, and ultimately triumphant. One evening, holding a sleeping Leo in her arms, she stood by the vast windows of the penthouse, looking down at the glittering expanse of Central Park. She was not the same woman who had lived here just a few months ago. That woman was gone, burned away in the fire of betrayal. The woman who remained was stronger, forged in steel, the true heir to her grandmother's legacy. She had faced the ultimate storm, and had not just survived. She had learned to command the wind. Genevieve Lacroix's story is a powerful reminder that the deepest betrayals can often forge the strongest resolve. She didn't just get mad, and she didn't just get even. She rewrote the entire game, transforming her pain into power and securing not just her own future, but the legacy of her child. She walked in on a nightmare and walked out with an empire. Hers is a testament to the fact that true strength isn't about never falling. It's about how you rise, and in the world of the elite, sometimes rising means taking everything.
Mistress destroyed, pregnant wife's baby shower, millionaire saw everything. Silver confetti shimmered beneath the grand chandelier of the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills, reflecting the radiant glow a mother to be who believed this day would be filled with love and celebration. Friends and family gathered around, eager to shower her with affection and gifts, completely unaware that a storm of secrets and betrayal was about to erupt. Amid the joyful music and endless chatter, a mysterious stranger slinked along the walls, determined to destroy the very event meant to honor new life. And hidden among the guests was a wealthy onlooker, an unintended witness to a scandal that would shake everyone present. Clarissa Meyer considered herself one of the luckiest women in Los Angeles. She was glowing, almost 8 months pregnant, and deeply in love with her husband, Daniel Meyer, a self-made millionaire who'd risen from a modest background. Tall and polished, Daniel carried an air of confidence that came from hard work rather than entitlement. He owned a thriving chain of upscale restaurants across Southern California and was known in social circles for his business acumen as well as his devotion to Clarissa. He was used to the limelight, but always managed to shine it on his wife and family, rather than revel in it himself. Although Clarissa was initially suspicious of fame and wealth, having come from a family that struggled to pay bills each month, she soon learned that Daniel's heart was as large as his bank account. He made it his mission to prove to her that money didn't have to corrupt one's spirit. In their early days of dating, he brought her to soup kitchens he funded, took her to meet staff at his restaurants, and introduced her to local charities he supported. She saw firsthand that he was not merely throwing money at problems, he was personally invested in making people's lives better. When Clarissa and Daniel decided to start a family, they approached it with both excitement and trepidation. Clarissa had always longed for motherhood, but she was aware that her new life in Daniel's opulent world came with pressures. She now floated through grand galas and exclusive events, learning to navigate conversations with celebrities and politicians. Some of those individuals were genuine, others whispered behind her back, questioning if she was truly worthy of Daniel. Yet for the most part, Clarissa felt accepted. She chose to see the best in people, focusing on Daniel's unwavering support and the promise of the little life growing inside her. By her 8th month of pregnancy, they decided to host a lavish baby shower. Daniel spared no expense. He arranged for the event to be held at the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills, a real place that had seen countless movie stars and business moguls gather for high-profile gatherings. Clarissa had initially argued for a simpler location, perhaps one of her favorite local parks or a cozy backyard affair, but Daniel wanted to celebrate her properly. He insisted that Clarissa, who was carrying his future heir, deserved every ounce of lavish love he could provide. After some convincing, Clarissa agreed to the grandeur. She thought, maybe it'll be fun to have a fairy tale moment. The hotel staff, used to hosting VIPs, started planning everything: pastel-colored floral arrangements, an elaborate dessert buffet that stretched along one side of the ballroom, and tables draped in linen so soft it felt like clouds. A custom ice sculpture of a teddy bear was even commissioned. Clarissa's mother, Harriet, cried tears of joy each time a new detail was mentioned. This baby wasn't just a blessing for Clarissa and Daniel. Harriet saw it as the family's symbol of hope. She was bursting with pride to see her daughter so happy and provided for. Yet, beneath the layers of glitz and maternal joy, an undercurrent of tension had begun swirling. Whispers passed through the staff in Daniel's restaurants, little rumors about a striking new hostess who had spent extra time in Daniel's private office. Clarissa's best friend, Melody, confided that she once saw Daniel lunching with this hostess at an upscale bistro, just the two of them, their heads leaning in close. When Clarissa tried to broach the subject with her husband, Daniel brushed it off as a business meeting, claiming he was evaluating certain staff members' potential for promotion. He had always tried to identify hidden talent and mentor promising employees, especially those from humble beginnings. He saw them as reflections of his younger self, hungry for a chance. Because Clarissa had always trusted Daniel, she put her mind at ease, albeit with a small twinge of uncertainty. At nearly 8 months pregnant, she told herself that Daniel's main priority was her and the baby. He was simply being his benevolent self, or so she prayed. She was too busy preparing for motherhood, scheduling hospital tours, and dealing with swollen feet to dwell on half-formed suspicions. She wanted to believe their love was unbreakable. Veronica Cole, a sultry brunette with a magnetic gaze, had recently been hired as a hostess at one of Daniel's upscale restaurants. She was admired for her polished composure, impeccable style, and ability to sweet-talk even the snootiest clientele. However, behind her captivating facade lay an ambition that burned hotter than any typical career goals. Veronica didn't want to just climb the ladder. She wanted to take the entire building for herself. Over the years, she had learned the art of manipulation. She excelled at flirting with powerful men and planting seeds of doubt in the minds of those around them. She had set her sights on Daniel Meyer the moment she'd heard about his background: young, charming, and extremely wealthy. She found subtle excuses to linger by his office, offering him coffee when he was occupied by a meeting, or greeting him after hours, claiming she was staying late to balance spreadsheets the manager had asked her to handle. At first, Daniel paid little attention to her. He might have found her competent, but he was far more interested in returning home to his pregnant wife, who always awaited him with that open, welcoming smile. But Veronica was patient. She'd been spurned before, and it only refined her tactics. She developed a routine, working tireless shifts, acting devoted and polite to everyone. Soon enough, she charmed the entire restaurant staff. People rooted for her, admired her perseverance, and even told Daniel stories of how Veronica stayed late to help with closing duties. Eventually, Daniel took notice. Impressed by her dedication, he asked Veronica to meet him for lunch, purely to discuss how he might support her professional growth. Or so he told himself. She feigned surprise, then gratitude. When he suggested the upscale bistro, she suggested somewhere more discreet, better to keep business matters private, she insisted. Daniel, always looking out for his employees, agreed. Though the lunch was intended to talk about a potential manager-in-training program, Veronica skillfully shifted the subject to Daniel himself, his achievements, his philanthropic work, his personal life. She used every social cue in the book, leaning forward, tilting her head attentively, providing the perfect balance of admiration and curiosity. Daniel, while faithful in his heart, couldn't help but feel flattered by the attention. Clarissa, heavily pregnant, was at home dealing with mood swings and physical discomfort. Veronica offered an escape, a reminder of who he was before the responsibilities of fatherhood consumed him. One lunch became 2, then 3. Daniel found himself comforting Veronica when she cried about her rent being raised, offering solutions, writing reference letters to help her find a more affordable apartment. He told himself he was being kind, but in reality, he was dancing on a dangerous line. Veronica's tears, like her smiles, were weaponized. She measured every tear carefully. She was aware that Clarissa existed, but in her mind, Clarissa was simply an obstacle. With Daniel's baby on the way, it was more urgent than ever for Veronica to stake her claim. She wasn't aiming to be another fling. She wanted to unseat the rightful queen and claim the throne for herself. The day Clarissa's baby shower was announced, news traveled swiftly through Daniel's business empire. Invitations spread to a network of entrepreneurs, celebrities, socialites, and close personal friends. Chefs and servers in his restaurants whispered excitedly about the glamorous event, and managers scrambled to rearrange schedules so key staff could attend. Clarissa was widely admired, and many people genuinely wanted to celebrate her big day. Veronica heard these whispers and pretended to be delighted for Clarissa, even congratulating her in person at one point. But beneath that practiced smile, Veronica felt her heart surge with resentment. She couldn't stand the idea that Clarissa, who had done little other than marry into wealth as she saw it, would bask in all this attention. In Veronica's mind, Clarissa had never worked a day in her life. Veronica had meticulously studied Clarissa's background, her modest upbringing, her college years, her volunteer work. None of it impressed Veronica. All she could see was the pregnant woman with a diamond ring that glowed like a small sun on her finger. The more Veronica raged in private, the more she fixated on a plan. She decided if Clarissa was about to receive her perfect day, Veronica would be there to destroy it. She wanted to not only sabotage the shower, but also publicly claim her place in Daniel's life. The notion of Daniel's child being welcomed into the world overshadowed her own ambitions. She'd heard rumors that Clarissa was carrying a son, an heir to the Maya fortune. Veronica saw that future as rightfully hers. And if Daniel wouldn't break the news to Clarissa that he had grown feelings elsewhere, well, she'd break it for him at the baby shower. Preparations for the baby shower went on for weeks. Clarissa's mother, Harriet, arrived in Los Angeles a month in advance to help finalize details. Harriet and Clarissa spent days sampling cakes, selecting pastel color themes, and mailing out personalized invitations. They giggled at the memory of Clarissa's childhood, how Harriet struggled to afford a decent birthday cake when times were tough, and now they were ordering a multi-tiered confection that looked too beautiful to eat. Daniel, busier than ever, did his best to check in on the plans, but in the background, Veronica tugged at his attention like a magnet pulling metal. She'd show up unannounced, teary-eyed, claiming another crisis. She made certain that Daniel gave her a ride home after late-night meetings, insisting it was unsafe to travel alone at night. Each time, she built a small sense of intimacy, complaining about the heartbreaks she'd suffered. She painted herself as a lonely soul in need of a savior. Daniel tried to keep firm boundaries, but each day his moral lines blurred a little more. Clarissa noticed he seemed more distracted. He came home with a furrowed brow, often checking his phone. When she asked, he brushed it off as business stress, expansions, new restaurant openings, competitor issues. Clarissa, wanting to be supportive, didn't press him further. She knew running a restaurant empire was no small feat. She didn't want to be the nagging wife, especially when she herself was near the final stretch of pregnancy. Even though alarm bells chimed in her mind, she hoped she was merely imagining trouble. The baby shower date finally arrived. The Four Seasons Hotel's grand ballroom was transformed into a wonderland. Tables were draped in pale pink and white linens, vases overflowed with peonies and roses, and the sweet smell of vanilla cupcakes wafted through the air. A lavish gift table groaned under the weight of neatly wrapped presents. The guest list included everyone from Daniel's business associates, Clarissa's longtime friends, neighbors from their gated community, Harriet's circle from her hometown, and even a handful of top staff from Daniel's restaurants. A small jazz ensemble played softly in the corner, setting a mellow, sophisticated tone. Servers in crisp attire glided through the room with trays of sparkling cider and hors d'oeuvre. Clarissa, adorned in a flowing pastel dress that hugged her pregnant belly, glowed with happiness. Harriet, wearing a proud grin, introduced herself to every guest, gushing about her soon-to-arrive grandchild. Daniel hovered near Clarissa, greeting well-wishers and making sure she felt comfortable. Unbeknownst to Clarissa, a storm was brewing in a nearby corridor. Veronica had managed to secure a black cocktail dress that fit her figure like a glove. She was not on the guest list, yet she breezed past the check-in table with the confidence of someone who belonged. Staff members recognized her from Daniel's restaurants, assuming she'd been personally invited by the boss. She floated through the ballroom doors, scanning the crowd like a seasoned hunter, looking for prey. The baby shower was in full swing, laughter echoing in every corner as Clarissa and Harriet tried to guess the flavors of baby food in a light-hearted game. Daniel was in the midst of a conversation with a business associate about a potential overseas expansion. Everyone was so immersed in the cheerful ambience that no one paid immediate attention to Veronica. But gradually, heads began to turn. Some recognized her from the restaurants and whispered questions about her presence. Others noticed the way her eyes locked onto Daniel, brimming with confidence. It was Harriet who first sensed the tension. She saw Veronica prowling toward Clarissa, her posture radiating hostility. Harriet quickly stepped forward to intercept her. She had no idea who the woman was, but sensed danger. Veronica flashed a venomous smile and breezed right past Harriet, heading straight for the mother-to-be. Clarissa looked up from unwrapping a tiny pair of baby socks when she felt a pair of cold eyes upon her. Veronica stood there, arms folded, lips curved in a cruel grin. The room went uncomfortably silent, all eyes flicking between Clarissa, Veronica, and Daniel. "Hello, Clarissa," Veronica purred, her voice dripping with faux politeness. "Congratulations on the baby. It must be thrilling to celebrate so publicly. Knowing you have, let's just say, competition." Clarissa blinked in confusion. I'm sorry. Do I know you?" In that moment, Daniel spotted Veronica and turned pale. He excused himself from his colleague and quickly approached, placing himself between Veronica and Clarissa. Harriet, who had inched closer, felt her stomach twist. The hush that descended over the party was nearly suffocating. Veronica seized the opportunity. In a voice loud enough to be heard by the entire gathering, she announced, "Clarissa, I'm Veronica Cole Daniels' employee, friend, and so much more. I'm here because I believe honesty is the best gift to bring to a baby shower." She turned her gaze to Daniel, her brow arched expectantly, as though daring him to contradict her. Clarissa's heart hammered in her chest. She glanced at Daniel, silently pleading for an explanation. Guests awkwardly looked down or exchanged bewildered glances. Harriet found herself stepping closer, her maternal instincts screaming that something was about to go very wrong. "Veronica," Daniel said in a tight voice, "this is neither the time nor the place. Leave now." But Veronica wouldn't be dismissed so easily. "Really, Daniel, have you told Clarissa about those late nights at my apartment? About the times you confessed how suffocated you felt by impending fatherhood?" She raised her voice a notch. "Did you tell your wife how you worried that she wouldn't be as exciting once the baby arrived?" A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Clarissa's eyes widened, tears of disbelief forming. Harriet stepped beside her daughter, one arm protectively around her shoulders, glaring daggers at Veronica. But the mistress wasn't finished. "I believed in you," Veronica went on, her voice trembling with feigned hurt. "I offered you solace when your pregnant wife was too tired and moody to care about your needs." She softened her tone to sound almost pitiful. "Daniel, I thought we had something real. Aren't you going to stand by me now?" Guests started whispering frantically. A few even pulled out their phones, discreetly filming or snapping pictures. This was a scandal that no one in that circle would soon forget. Clarissa felt her world collapsing. She glanced up at Daniel, desperately seeking denial or reassurance, anything to refute this horrible claim. Clarissa's eyes welled with tears. The once vibrant glow on her face turned to ashen shock. Daniel, breathing heavily, tried to grasp Clarissa's hand, but she recoiled. Harriet held her daughter tight, her expression a mix of anger and heartbreak. "It's not true," Daniel managed, voice shaking. He turned to Clarissa. "Clarissa, you know me." "I would never," Veronica barked, a bitter laugh. "Never! How dare you lie!" She produced her phone and flashed the screen. "Texts from you, photos, hotel receipts. Or should I show the charges for dinner reservations where we had our little private rendezvous?" Daniel's eyes flitted to the phone in dread. He knew, with a sinking feeling, that there had been lunches and dinners, discrete times he'd stepped over a line he swore he'd never cross. But had it really gone so far as to be considered a full-blown affair? Clarissa's gaze flickered with betrayal as she saw his hesitation. "Tell me, this is a misunderstanding," Clarissa pleaded. Her voice quavered, raw with emotion. Daniel attempted to compose himself. Yes, there were meetings, but they were about her role in the company, about her financial struggles. "We never," he cut off, uncertain how to explain the 1,000 half-truths he'd lived in the last few months. Veronica seized the moment. "Never? Then why does my phone have pictures of us kissing in your car last week?" Another deafening hush. All eyes drilled into Daniel, who appeared to deflate under the weight of his shame. Clarissa's lip trembled. The swirl of confusion, anger, and heartbreak threatened to push her over the edge. Harriet's hand tightened around her daughter's shoulder, feeling the deep maternal urge to shield Clarissa from further pain. Suddenly, Harriet exploded with anger, turning on Veronica. "How dare you come here uninvited and spew these lies on my daughter's special day? You have no shame." Veronica's stance turned smug. "Your precious daughter is living in a fantasy. I'm just here to show her the truth." She took a step closer, eyes flicking with triumph. "Daniel has been in my bed, telling me he's unsure about fatherhood, that Clarissa's pregnancy is making him feel trapped. He needed an escape, and I provided it." The harsh words struck Clarissa like a physical blow. She clutched her stomach, feeling an overwhelming surge of pain, not just emotional, but physical. For a terrifying second, she worried about going into early labor. She inhaled slowly, trying to steady herself. One of Daniel's business associates, an older man named Robert Morris, a fellow millionaire who'd partnered with Daniel in a philanthropic project, cleared his throat. He stepped forward, frowning deeply. Robert was a steadfast ally to the Myers and had known them for years. "Veronica, do you have any sense of decency? This is a baby shower, for heaven's sake. If you truly had an issue, you should have addressed it in private." Veronica shot him a poisonous glare. "Stay out of this, old man. Your moral judgments don't apply when it comes to matters of the heart. Or is it the wallet?" Gasps emanated from the crowd. Robert's eyes blazed, but he contained his anger. He looked at Clarissa sympathetically. "We should put an end to this. Clarissa, Daniel, perhaps you should speak privately." Clarissa struggled to find her voice. "No," she said firmly, tears still glistening. "I want to know the truth, all of it. Right here, right now." Daniel sank into a chair, pressing his palms against his forehead as if trying to scrub away the guilt. He had never intended for it to reach this point. To him, it was just a misguided emotional affair, or so he told himself. Physical, yes, there had been a kiss or two, but he swore to himself it went no further. Now, faced with Veronica's dramatic display, it seemed he had lost control entirely. With everyone watching, their eyes drilling holes into him, Daniel began to speak in a broken voice. "Yes, I spent time with Veronica," he confessed. "I was stupid. I was lonely. Clarissa has been so focused on the baby, and I—" He paused, choking on his words. "No, that's not an excuse. I should never have crossed that line, but I swear to you, Clarissa, on our baby's life, that I never slept with her." It was emotionally inappropriate, but it never went beyond a few moments of weakness. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some believed him, understanding that mistakes happen when couples face major life changes. Others saw it as the typical denial of a cheater who'd been caught. Veronica's lip curled in scorn. "How dare you reduce me to a fling?" she hissed. "We had a connection. You told me you were unhappy, that Clarissa wasn't fulfilling your needs. And now you're throwing me to the wolves in front of all these people?" Daniel rose to his feet, trying to maintain composure. We didn't have a future. I told you that from the start. I love my wife. I love our child." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry for how I led you on, but this is not the way to handle it." Clarissa watched their exchange, her heart in tatters. The man she revered had betrayed her in ways she never imagined possible. Yet the line between a total affair and an emotional entanglement was blurred, especially given Veronica's allegations. Clarissa's mind spun with questions. Who was telling the truth? Was Daniel partially lying to save face? How could she have been so blind? Harriet steadied Clarissa, whispering that they should leave to end this humiliation. But Clarissa, fueled by a mixture of heartbreak and anger, decided to confront Veronica herself. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. "Veronica, I don't know how far things went. I don't know what you hope to gain by humiliating me at my baby shower. But let me make one thing clear: you have no power over my child's future or my marriage." She cast a furious look at Daniel, who appeared remorseful and conflicted. "Whether he is telling the truth about the extent of your relationship or not, you will not destroy me. I won't give you that satisfaction." Veronica's eyes flashed. "You think you can just close the door on reality because you wear a wedding ring. I'm not finished." She took a step closer and announced, "Daniel, the first pregnant too." A stunned hush fell again, even heavier than before. Clarissa's trembling hand flew to her mouth. Harriet's eyes nearly popped out of her head. Robert Morris looked ready to call security, and Daniel's face went bone white. The entire atmosphere, once filled with pastel decorations and the promise of new life, had been seized by an almost suffocating gloom. Clarissa felt her knees buckle. She's pregnant too? The betrayal cut even deeper than any heartbreak she had ever imagined. Harriet had to steady Clarissa again, worried she might collapse. Guests stood frozen, torn between disbelief and morbid curiosity. Daniel swallowed hard, glancing at Veronica in horror. "What are you talking about?" Veronica folded her arms, her gaze smug. "I found out a few weeks ago. I thought you'd be happy. After all, you told me privately that you weren't sure if Clarissa's baby was truly what you wanted. You said you might want a child with someone else someday." She shot Clarissa a twisted look. "I guess that day is now." "You're lying," Daniel shouted. "I never said that. You're just—" "Oh, I'm lying." Veronica took out a folded piece of paper from her clutch. "Doctor's note confirming my pregnancy. Should I show everyone?" She looked around the crowd, whose collective shock had turned into a silent horror show. "Perhaps you'd like me to describe the night of conception. The hotel you booked for us, remember? The one near the beach in Santa Monica?" Clarissa, her face hot with tears, tried to hold on to a shred of composure. Daniel was gasping for breath, struggling to piece together Veronica's claims. The child could easily be someone else's. He and Veronica had only kissed unless, in a moment of drunken weakness, he had blacked out. The confusion ate at him. In an attempt to reason, he shook his head vigorously. "This is madness," he muttered. "Clarissa, the first never, maybe for a fleeting second I was drawn to her, but I did not sleep with her. She's lying to tear us apart." Veronica raised an eyebrow. "So I'm lying about the baby now? Care to do a paternity test?" "I'd be happy to oblige." Clarissa couldn't stand it anymore. Panic surged within her. She cradled her belly, terrified that the stress might harm her unborn child. The feeling of betrayal was crushing. Her husband might have fathered another woman's child. Her entire relationship felt like a house of cards toppling in an earthquake. Harriet sensed the imminent danger of Clarissa's stress levels and guided her to a nearby chair. Robert Morris signaled to some of the hotel staff, requesting water, a cold towel, anything to help Clarissa calm down. In the background, the hum of whispered gossip escalated. Photos and videos were surely being posted online. Then, in the midst of the chaos, an unexpected voice spoke up. One of the servers from Daniel's restaurant, a young woman named Lily, stepped forward nervously. She recognized Veronica well and had overheard staff gossip about her. "I'm sorry," Lily began, voice trembling, "but I have something to say." All eyes pivoted to Lily, who seemed to gather her courage. "I overheard Veronica on her phone a few weeks ago. She was bragging that she'd found the perfect man to pin a pregnancy on. Her words, not mine. She said he was rich, successful, and that once she claimed he was the father, she'd be set for life." A ripple of shock swept through the crowd. Veronica shot Lily a look of pure venom. "Shut your mouth. You don't know anything." But Lily persisted. "She specifically mentioned forging a document if necessary. I was so disturbed, but I didn't think it was my place to say anything. Now I see that I should have spoken up sooner." She turned to Clarissa with a remorseful expression. "I'm so sorry. I should have warned you or Daniel." A glimmer of hope stirred in Clarissa's chest. Could this entire fiasco be part of Veronica's twisted game? Daniel, although furious at Lily for not coming forward earlier, felt an immense wave of relief. "She's lying about the baby," he repeated firmly, stepping toward Clarissa. "The first, swear, Clarissa, the first did not do this." Veronica, cornered by Lily's accusation, found her confidence faltering, but she put on one last show of defiance. "You pitiful little waitress, trying to tear me down. Everyone here knows you're just a petty employee who wants to get in the boss's good graces. I have a doctor's note and I will prove it's real." Daniel seized the moment. "Fine. Let's do a test. Right now, the best fertility clinic in Beverly Hills is less than 15 minutes away. We can settle this once and for all." Veronica blanched. She hadn't anticipated being backed into a corner so quickly. She stammered, "Fine, let's go. Right now, let's go." But instead of heading for the door, Veronica whipped around to face Clarissa. Her eyes glimmered with twisted glee. "Even if the baby is not Daniel's, think about what you've witnessed. He cheated, emotionally at least. He lied. He betrayed you. You'll never trust him again. Isn't that enough for you to leave him?" Clarissa stared at Veronica, raw heartbreak in her eyes. Indeed, trust was shattered, and no matter the paternity test result, Daniel's betrayal was undeniable. Still, Clarissa felt a flicker of strength inside her. She held herself upright, mustering a resolve she didn't know she had. "You've done enough damage," she told Veronica, her voice trembling but firm. "Now get out of my baby shower. If you have proof of your claims, take them to a lawyer. Otherwise, leave me my child and my family in peace." Veronica realized her plan to publicly humiliate Clarissa had spectacularly backfired. While she had certainly caused a huge rift, the presence of Lily and the immediate call for a paternity test threatened to expose her for the manipulative opportunist she was. Without further theatrics, she dashed toward the exit, pushing past stunned guests. Yet before she could vanish, Daniel's security team, who, upon noticing the escalating drama, had stationed themselves at the ballroom doors, approached her. "Excuse me, ma'am," one security guard said, stepping into her path. "We have been asked to ensure that you do not cause further disturbance. Would you please come with us?" Sensing that a physical confrontation wouldn't benefit her, Veronica plastered on a final sneer and held her head high. "Don't worry, I'm leaving, but this isn't over." With that, she stormed out, letting the heavy doors bang shut behind her. Inside, the crowd exhaled collectively, as if they'd been holding their breath for an eternity. Clarissa, still in shock, sank deeper into her chair. Harriet kneeled beside her, holding her hand. Daniel looked lost, torn between relief and despair. The entire ambience, once bright and joyful, had been poisoned by betrayal and lies. Robert Morris, trying to take charge of the situation, clapped his hands. "Everyone, perhaps we should give the family some privacy. The shower is concluded for now. Please respect." Clarissa's need for rest, guests, nodding solemnly, began to disperse, some whispering consolation and others casting suspicious glances at Daniel. A few staff members from the hotel helped pack up the gifts, while Harriet guided Clarissa toward a private room to calm down. Daniel lingered behind, speaking quietly to Robert. "I need to fix this," he said, voice hushed. "I made a huge mistake. I don't know how to make it right." Robert's expression was grave. "First, go to Clarissa, apologize, assure her you'll do the paternity test to clear your name on that front. The rest, well, you'll need to earn her trust again, if that's even possible." Daniel nodded, feeling like the loneliest man in the world. He might have been a millionaire, but in that moment, he felt emotionally bankrupt. Clarissa's entire body trembled with the aftershocks of what had just transpired. She sat in the hotel's private suite, Harriet holding her hand while a concerned nurse summoned by the hotel staff checked her blood pressure. Once it was clear Clarissa was physically stable, Harriet thanked the nurse and insisted that the best medicine for her daughter right now was peace and quiet. "Mom," Clarissa finally said in a hushed tone, "I can't believe all of this. I'm so humiliated." Harriet squeezed her daughter's hand. "You have nothing to be ashamed of, sweetheart. That woman was vile. Daniel, he's going to have to answer to you, and he'll need to do everything in his power to repair this." Clarissa's eyes brimmed with tears again. "I thought we had the perfect marriage. I never imagined something like this could happen." Harriet stroked her hair gently. "Marriage is complicated. People make mistakes, but only you can decide if this mistake is forgivable. Right now, you need to focus on your health and the baby." A soft knock on the door drew their attention. Daniel stood there, looking like a man on the edge of collapse. His once confident posture was slumped in remorse. Harriet gave Clarissa's shoulder a reassuring squeeze before stepping out of the room, granting them privacy. Clarissa eyed him warily, her heart torn between love and betrayal. He began to speak, voice thick with emotion. "Clarissa, the first am so sorry. I never wanted you to be hurt like this. I was weak, I was foolish, but I swear on everything I hold dear, I never slept with her." Clarissa took a shaky breath. "Daniel, you still kissed her. You confessed personal feelings to her that you should have been sharing with me. You said you felt trapped by the pregnancy." He flinched, as though struck. "That was never how I truly felt. I was overwhelmed. Yes, but I love you. I love our child. Veronica manipulated me." Clarissa laughed bitterly. "Of course she did, but you let her. That doesn't absolve you of blame. How can I trust you now?" Daniel lowered his head. "I don't expect you to trust me right away, but give me a chance to prove myself. I'll do the paternity test immediately. I'll handle Veronica legally if needed. I'll go to counseling. Anything to show you that you and our baby come first." The sincerity in his voice tugged at Clarissa's heart. She wanted to believe him, but the wound was fresh, the pain still excruciating. With tears spilling down her cheeks, she shook her head slowly. "I just need time. This entire day, what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, has been ruined. I need space, Daniel." He nodded, eyes shimmering with tears. "I understand." With that, he slowly turned and walked out, leaving Clarissa to her grief. Harriet slipped back in, wrapping her daughter in a comforting embrace. The mother-to-be's tears stained her once lovely dress, and the shadow of betrayal cloaked what should have been a radiant celebration. Veronica was furious. She had fled the baby shower in a storm of embarrassment, but she wasn't ready to concede defeat. For days after the event, rumors spread across social media. Short videos of her confrontation at the shower popped up on gossip blogs. People speculated whether Daniel was indeed the father of her alleged baby, or if she was a cunning gold digger. The majority seemed to side with Clarissa, condemning Veronica's brazen attempt to overshadow the baby shower. In the court of public opinion, Veronica was a pariah, but still, she believed she had a trump card. She knew that whether or not the child was Daniel's, the spectre of paternity could rattle him. If he wanted to ensure she remained silent about their dalliance, whatever shape it took, he might be inclined to settle financially. She dreamt of a lavish lifestyle, and she wasn't about to let that dream slip away. Veronica scheduled an appointment at a reputable OB-GYN in Beverly Hills, forging Daniel's name on forms as the potential father. She planned to use the records as leverage, confident she could claim Daniel was refusing to accept responsibility. She also booked a consultation with a high-powered lawyer known for winning massive paternity suits. Even if DNA tests disproved Daniel's fatherhood, she hoped to drag out the process long enough to gain a sizable settlement. She reveled in the idea of Clarissa losing faith in Daniel, fueling a fire that might burn the marriage to ash. Yet there was one factor Veronica hadn't anticipated: the tight-knit nature of Daniel's business empire. Many employees saw Clarissa as the beloved wife of their boss, a kind soul who often donated to their family causes. Lily's confession at the shower had earned her scorn from Veronica, but Lily was quietly praised by co-workers for doing the right thing. Word spread, and soon the entire staff was banding together, refusing to cooperate with Veronica. In fact, some employees had evidence of Veronica's manipulative tactics: texts, overheard conversations, times she tried to seduce or blackmail other managers. The tide was turning, and it wasn't in Veronica's favor. As promised, Daniel wasted no time setting up a DNA paternity test. Though typically performed after the baby's birth, there were prenatal tests that could determine paternity with a blood sample from the mother. Veronica, savoring the drama, agreed to a non-invasive prenatal paternity NIPP test. So long as Daniel footed the bill, she feigned reluctance, acting as though she were being pressured by a powerful man. In reality, she hoped the test results could be delayed, giving her more time to extort hush money. But Daniel was done being a victim of Veronica's schemes. He requested a top-notch lab used by many Hollywood celebrities who needed privacy and speed. The lab staff had zero tolerance for tampering or bribes. Veronica submitted her sample, confident she could coax or blackmail a technician. She quickly learned that the lab's security measures were too strict. By the time she realized how tightly monitored the facility was, she was in too deep. Clarissa, meanwhile, wrestled with heartbreak and anxiety. Despite her anger, she felt a twinge of dread at the thought that the test could confirm Veronica's pregnancy with Daniel. What if he really fathered her child? The betrayal would be insurmountable. She might walk away for good, filing for divorce and raising her baby on her own. On the other hand, if the test cleared Daniel, how would she reconcile the emotional affair? Would she try to forgive him? Could she even salvage the shards of trust left between them? Days passed, filled with tension. Harriet insisted Clarissa stay at her house, away from the marital home she shared with Daniel. Clarissa agreed, but she allowed Daniel to visit each evening to check on her health. Their interactions were polite but strained. Sometimes Clarissa would break down in tears, lamenting that she didn't know if she could ever forgive him. Daniel would patiently listen, offering gentle reassurances that his love was real. Finally, the test results arrived. Daniel opened the envelope in the presence of his lawyer, Robert Morris, and Clarissa. Hands trembling, Clarissa read over his shoulder. The result: 0% chance that Daniel was the father. A collective sigh of relief filled the room. Daniel hugged Clarissa, tears of gratitude in his eyes. Clarissa cried too, though not solely from relief. She cried for the betrayal she had endured, for the baby shower fiasco, for the heartbreak that might have been avoided if Daniel had been stronger or more transparent. Robert Morris wasted no time. He reached out to a trusted contact in the district attorney's office, explaining how Veronica had forged documents, blackmailed Daniel, and defamed him. The wheels of justice began to turn, albeit slowly. Soon, Veronica would realize that not only had she failed to break Daniel and Clarissa's marriage, but she might face legal consequences for her deceit. When Veronica received the official paternity test results, her fury knew no bounds. Yet she quickly pivoted to her next strategy. She filed a lawsuit against Daniel for intentional infliction of emotional distress, claiming he had strung her along, causing her mental anguish. She demanded a settlement, hoping Daniel would pay to keep the scandal from further tarnishing his reputation. Daniel's legal team responded with chilling efficiency. They countersued for defamation, blackmail, and fraud. They possessed a trove of evidence collected from staff members' texts, audio recordings, and other documentation. Veronica found herself cornered. No powerful lawyer would take her case without a massive retainer, something she couldn't afford. She was forced to rely on a small-time attorney who took half-hearted interest in her plight. Word spread among other wealthy entrepreneurs in Los Angeles, particularly those who used to see Veronica as a charming, if ambitious, hostess. She was effectively blacklisted from high-end establishments, her manipulations too notorious. She tried applying for hostess jobs elsewhere, but her name raised red flags. A few tabloids wrote scathing exposes on her infiltration attempts into the Maya Empire. She even contemplated leaving Los Angeles altogether. But before she could finalize an escape plan, Veronica received another blow, a subpoena. Daniel's legal team was pushing for a thorough investigation into her alleged forgeries. If proven, Veronica could face criminal charges. The baby shower fiasco, which she had planned as her triumphant reveal, had snowballed into her downfall. Her illusions of grandeur evaporated, leaving her with the stark reality that she had become a social outcast, financially desperate, and possibly on the brink of facing jail time. Clarissa watched from the sidelines as Veronica's life crumbled, yet she took little joy in it. She was too focused on managing her own stress levels and preparing for the arrival of her baby. The memory of her baby shower, once envisioned as a magical day, still loomed over her like a dark cloud. Daniel, for his part, devoted himself to repairing the marriage. He began therapy to address the emotional barriers that led him to confide in Veronica. He also insisted Clarissa join him for couples counseling once a week. Initially, Clarissa resisted. She was angry and felt betrayed, questioning whether therapy could mend something so profoundly damaged. But Harriet gently encouraged her, reminding Clarissa that her child deserved two parents who at least attempted reconciliation. Counseling sessions were raw and painful. Clarissa vented her anger, crying over how Daniel's half-truths had shattered her self-esteem. She admitted feeling insecure about her body during pregnancy, about Daniel possibly losing interest in her. Daniel confessed the fears he had about being a father, worries about not living up to the role, about losing his identity in the process. He admitted that he found Veronica's attention flattering, a reminder of his pre-marriage freedom. But as the weeks passed, the therapy sessions fostered open conversations they had never had before. Slowly, Clarissa saw that Daniel wasn't some cold-hearted monster, but rather a flawed man who made terrible choices. The bond they shared, once so strong, might be rebuilt if they worked hard enough. During this time, Harriet remained a pillar of support. She helped Clarissa with everyday tasks, soothed her daughter's grief, and quietly reminded Daniel that if he ever pulled such a stunt again, she would personally ensure Clarissa never suffered. Despite the tension, Harriet understood the complexities of love and betrayal. Her presence anchored Clarissa in hope. Just as it seemed everything was settling into a pattern of slow healing, a twist emerged from an unexpected source, Veronica's own mother. A frail, older woman arrived at Daniel's office one afternoon, politely asking to speak with him. Concerned, Daniel invited her in, uncertain of her motives. She introduced herself as Marjorie Cole. Her grey, streaked hair and weary eyes spoke of a hard life. She confessed that she hadn't spoken to her daughter, Veronica, in years. But she'd seen the scandal unfold on local news stations and read about it in tabloids. She was horrified to learn her daughter had become so consumed by greed and hatred. Veronica was always troubled, Marjorie whispered. She wanted to escape poverty at all costs. I tried to raise her right, but I failed. I'm sorry for the pain she's caused you and your family. Daniel, still reeling from all the damage Veronica had inflicted, wasn't sure how to respond. I appreciate your apology, Mrs. Cole, but your daughter nearly destroyed my marriage. She humiliated my wife in front of our entire social circle. Tears slipped from Marjorie's eyes. I know. I can't excuse her actions, but I want to help you. I have information that might persuade her to drop all legal claims and vanish from your life forever. My daughter has a history of forging documents and blackmailing men. She was involved in a similar scandal back in Florida, though it never got this big. I have proof that can ensure you win your countersuit. She handed over a worn-out folder containing letters, testimonies, and dated photos. Daniel thumbed through them, astonished. If the evidence was authentic, it would be the final nail in Veronica's coffin. She wouldn't be able to manipulate the legal system anymore. Marjorie sighed, her shoulders sagging. I'm not doing this for her. I'm doing this for the innocent lives she's trying to trample. No one deserves what my daughter has done. Daniel thanked her, promising to handle the matter discreetly. He walked her to the door, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. Veronica's mother had essentially delivered the means to end this battle. The entire situation felt surreal, one mother stepping in to help protect another mother from her own daughter's cruelty. Armed with Marjorie's documents, Daniel's lawyers swiftly dismantled Veronica's final legal claims. Faced with irrefutable evidence of her history of fraud, Veronica's attorney advised her to drop the suit. She had no choice but to comply. The countersuit for defamation and fraud loomed large, and she knew she was on the brink of criminal charges if she continued to fight. Desperate, Veronica reached out to Daniel, leaving tearful voicemails. She begged him to meet her privately, to show mercy. Daniel refused. He saw no point in hearing more of her manipulations. He wanted her out of his life, out of Clarissa's life, and never again to torment them. The last message Veronica left was a bitter diatribe, cursing Daniel and promising that he'd regret discarding her. But her words carried no weight. She had lost all leverage. Daniel's lawyers arranged for Veronica to sign a cease and desist agreement, preventing her from making further public statements about the Myers. In return, Daniel's side agreed to drop certain financial damages. Veronica was left jobless, socially ostracized, and saddled with legal fees that would haunt her for years. She disappeared from the Los Angeles social scene, rumored to have moved to a cheaper state. There, she might find a fresh start, or she might simply repeat her cycle of deception. It no longer mattered to Clarissa or Daniel. They were free of her. With Veronica gone, Clarissa and Daniel's focus turned toward their baby's impending arrival. The stress of the ordeal had taken a toll on Clarissa's final weeks of pregnancy. However, through counseling, she learned strategies to cope with anxiety, reminding herself that her baby needed serenity and positive energy. Daniel worked hard to reassure her, taking over more responsibilities, surprising her with daily acts of kindness, reading parenting books, and practicing baby swaddling techniques to prepare. Harriet remained at their side, providing home-cooked meals and moral support. She watched as Daniel humbly tried to rebuild the trust he had broken. Over time, Harriet's hostility toward him softened, but she maintained a protective stance. She reminded him daily, either through a pointed look or a cautionary word, that Clarissa's well-being was paramount. At last, on a clear, sunny morning, Clarissa went into labor. Daniel rushed her to Cedars Sinai Medical Center. The labor was long and exhausting, but Clarissa endured with Daniel by her side. He held her hand through every painful contraction, whispering words of encouragement and love. Though a piece of Clarissa's heart still ached from the betrayal, she found solace in seeing Daniel's earnest devotion in that crucial moment. Their son, named Nathaniel James Meyer, entered the world with a sharp, healthy cry. Clarissa wept with relief and joy. Daniel cradled the tiny infant, tears streaming down his cheeks. Harriet, who had been pacing in the waiting room, rushed in to behold her grandson. She, too, was overwhelmed by emotion. For a moment, the bitterness of the past months slipped away, replaced by the miracle of new life. In the days following Nathaniel's birth, Clarissa and Daniel navigated the intense learning curve of new parenthood. Late-night feedings, diaper changes, and the simultaneous exhaustion and wonder that came with caring for an infant. The spectre of Veronica's betrayal still lingered, but it felt more distant with each day spent bonding as a family. Daniel continued therapy individually, determined not to repeat the emotional missteps of the past. Couples counseling also resumed, with the added dynamic of parenthood shaping their discussions. Clarissa took comfort in small gestures, the way Daniel volunteered for 3 a.m. feedings, how he gazed at Nathaniel with pure adoration, how he insisted Clarissa sleep while he handled chores. These tangible displays of love helped mend the wounds of betrayal. Still, it wasn't a fairy tale ending. Scars remained. Clarissa had triggered certain songs or places that reminded her of the baby shower fiasco. She had nightmares of Veronica barging in with new accusations. Sometimes, in moments of doubt, she questioned whether Daniel truly wanted this life. But then she'd see him carefully rocking Nathaniel to sleep or catch him reading a fatherhood article. She realized that, step by step, he was proving himself. Harriet, too, noticed the changes. She watched Daniel transform from a confident businessman into a gentle, nurturing father. She quietly confided to Clarissa, "He's growing up. Sometimes men take longer than we'd like, but if he's genuinely working to be better, that's worth considering." The final note of karma came months later when Veronica, unable to pay her mounting legal bills, was forced to file for bankruptcy. Word reached Los Angeles through a mutual acquaintance. Clarissa, holding Nathaniel, read the news on her phone. She experienced a strange mix of emotions. She had never wished utter ruination on anyone, but part of her felt a quiet sense of justice. Veronica had inflicted incredible harm, and now she was paying the price. Daniel, reading over Clarissa's shoulder, gently kissed her temple. "I hope she finds peace someday," he said, surprising Clarissa. She expected rage or bitterness, but perhaps therapy had changed him. He knew better than anyone the destructive power of resentment. Letting go was, in its own way, more liberating. Clarissa nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She thought back to her ruined baby shower, to the humiliating scene that had shattered her world. Yet here she was, cradling a healthy baby boy, next to a husband who was fighting to atone for his mistakes. Life had a strange way of weaving tragedy and joy together. While the memory still stung, Clarissa felt stronger than before. She had survived betrayal, heartbreak, and a public scandal. She had found resilience in herself she never knew existed. Harriet, standing at the doorway, smiled as she saw the little family. She stepped forward, pressing a gentle hand on Clarissa's shoulder. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, "of both of you." In that moment, Clarissa realized that though her baby shower was destroyed, a different kind of celebration was blossoming, a celebration of second chances, personal growth, and the kind of love that endures storms. It wasn't a neat, tidy ending. Healing would be ongoing work. But as Nathaniel gurgled happily in her arms, Clarissa felt hope eclipse the darkness. This was her real life, a fragile, beautiful tapestry of mistakes, forgiveness, and new beginnings. Every fall from grace can offer a chance for redemption if people are willing to learn from their mistakes. Clarissa and Daniel's marriage, once shaken to its core, found fresh footing through honest conversations, therapy, and the tender embrace of new parenthood. The mistress, who orchestrated chaos and nearly succeeded in tearing them apart, ultimately met the consequences of her deeds. She faded from high society and faced the heavy toll of her schemes. While no relationship emerges unscathed from betrayal, Clarissa and Daniel discovered that broken trust can sometimes be rebuilt if two people commit to healing and growth together.